Hi, it's Grandmama Doris. This episode, we're starting at Chapter 3 in The Lemonade Wars. We did Chapters 1 and 2 yesterday in my daughter's favorite book. Evan was pretty upset with his sister, and they were wanting to have a lemonade stand. He was upset because his sister's going to be in his class this coming year at school. And he's going to be a fourth grader, and she's going to be, a second grader, but she skipped a grade. So he's really upset about that she's going to be in his class. So we're going to pick it up on Chapter 3. Your sister, she's really... Shut up, said Evan. Huh? Just shut up. She's okay. She just doesn't look... Well, she's okay, so just shut up. Yeah, okay, said Scott, holding up a free hand to show that he meant peace. Evan was getting abused on both sides. The heavy cooler was banging against the inside of his leg with every step, and the plastic chairs were scraping up against the outside of his leg. Bruised and bloodied, he thought to himself, all for the fun of hanging out with Scott Spencer. Why couldn't Jack have been home, or Ryan? And why did Adam have to go to the Cape this week? It just stunk. How far are we walking? Grunted Scott. Just to the corner. Evan watched as drops of sweat fell from his face and landed on the hot sidewalk. We should have stayed in the driveway. It was shaded. The corner is better, trust me, said Evan. He remembered when Jesse had said he had came there last summer. They were setting up a lemonade stand together, and Evan had been grumbling about dragging the cooler across the street and down to the two houses, just like Scott. But Jesse had insisted. There's a sidewalk on this side, she said, so we'll get the foot traffic coming out of both directions and the people in the cars around the curve. The curve will have time to see us. We'll slow down. Besides, there are a bunch of little kids on the side of the street, and their mothers don't want them crossing that road. The corner's better, trust me. And she was right. They made a ton of money that afternoon. It took like 10 seconds to set up the lemonade stand. Evan unfolded the chairs and set one on each side of the cooler. Scott tilted the sign toward the street for maximum effect. Then they both sat down. Man, it's hot, said Evan. He took off his baseball cap and wiped the sweat from his face with his shirt. Then he grabbed an ice cube from the cooler. He balanced it on his head and he stuck his cap back on. Yeah, said Scott, I'm thirsty. He reached into the paper bag and pulled out a cup. It was one of those large red plastic cups that vendors use at professional baseball games. Then Scott took one of the pitchers from the cooler and filled the cup to the brim with lemonade. Hey, not so much, said Evan, pouring himself a cup too, but only part way. He guzzled it down. Not bad, he thought, though he noticed a dead fruit fly floating at the top. His mom had been battling a mad fruit fly infestation ever since the weather had turned really warm. The kitchen sink area, where they kept their fruit bowl, was dotted with little tiny feather fruit fly corpses. Scott drained his cup and tossed it on the ground. Ah, he said, satisfied. That was good. I think I'll have another. Evan reached for the trashed cup and stowed it under his seat. No, come on, Scott. You're going to drink up all the profits. He stretched his legs out by putting his feet on top of the cooler. Just chilling. I'm going to chill by having another cup, said Scott. There it was, that mean bite in Scott's voice. Evan's shoulders tensed up. Move your feet, said Scott. It's hot out here. Dude, Evan sat up unexpectedly and looked down the street. Here comes our first customer. A mother pushing a double stroller, came up into view. At the time, one of the kindergartners from down the street rode her bike up and noticed the sign and quickly backpedaled toward her house. Within 5 minutes, there was a small crowd of neighborhood kids and pedestrians buying lemonade from their stand. Evan let Scott handle the money while he took care of the pouring and the sweet talk. That's what his mother called it when a salesperson chatted her up. Trust me, She had once told Evan and Jessie, buying something is only half of getting something. The other half is the human contact. Miss Tresky knew about these things because she was a public relations consultant. She had even written a booklet called The 10 Bright Ideas to Lighten Up Your Sales for one of her clients. And Evan was like her. He was good at talking with people, even grown-ups. It was easy for him, so he kept the conversation flowing, along with the lemonade. People hung around. Most of them bought a second cup before they left. Evan was so busy he almost didn't notice Jessie flying out of the garage on her bike and riding down the street towards town. Good riddance, he thought. But at the same time, he wondered, where was she going? During a lull in business, Evan walked around the stand, picking up discarded plastic cups. Scott sat in his chair, jingling the coins in his pocket. Man, we're gonna be rich, said Scott. I bet we've made $50 already. I bet we've made 10. How much you think we made? Evan shrugged. He looked at the stack of the used cups in his hand, and he counted the rims. 14. He'd sold 14 cups so far, and each cup of lemonade was 50 cents. Evan heard Mrs. DeFazio's voice in his ear. Mrs. DeFazio had been his third-grade teacher, and she had done everything she could to help Evan with his math. If a cup of lemonade sells for 50 cents, he thought to himself, and you sell 14 cups of lemonade, how much money would you make? Word problems. Evan hated word problems. And this one was impossible anyway. He was pretty sure the right equation was 14 times 50. But how was he supposed to solve that? That was double-digit multiplication. And there was no way he could do a problem like that. And besides, some of those 14 people had bought refills in the same cup. How many? Evan didn't know. Still, he knew he'd made a pretty good amount of money. That estimate was close enough for him. How much do you think we'll make if we sell it all? Said Scott. I don't know, said Evan. Maybe $20. That sounded high even to him, but Evan was an optimist. Do you really think? Both boys looked at the cooler. 3 pitchers were empty. They only had a half a pitcher left. You were pouring the cups too full, said Scott. You should have poured less in each cup. You're the one who brought the huge plastic cups. You could fill a gallon with one of those. Said Evan. Besides, I was going to be chintzy. They're paying for a half a buck for it. They deserve a full cup. And anyway, we can just go home and make some more. My mom has lots of cans of lemonade in the freezer. So go home and make some more, said Scott. Oh, yes, Your Majesty, High Commander, Your Infiniteness. Why don't you make some? Come on, I'm chilling, said Scott, leaning back in his chair with a stupid grin on his face. Evan knew he was just joking, but this was his way exactly why he did not like Scott. He was always thinking of himself, always looking out to say he could come up on top. If they were playing knockout, Scott would always come up with a new rule to help him win. If they were going to assignment together, Scott always figured out how to divide it so he had less work. The kid was just a weasel, no 2 ways about it. But everyone was out of town. Evan didn't want to spend the day alone, and Jessie was on his poop list, as his mom called it, when the dog did something that he wasn't supposed to. Evan might never play with Jessie again. Evan crossed the street and went into the house. He was surprised to find that there were no more cans of lemonade in the freezer. Wow, there had been so many this morning. Luckily, there was a can of grape juice in the freezer and a bottle of ginger ale in the fridge. It'll work, he thought. People just wanted something cold to drink, and I don't think they care if it's lemonade. He mixed up the grape juice in the sink. The fruit flies were more out of control than ever, thanks to the lemonade, and the boys had dribbled on the countertop. Evan swatted at a couple of the fruit flies, but most of them drifted out of his reach and settled on the fruit bowl. He wished his mother believed in chemical warfare. But for Mrs. Tresky, it was all natural or nothing. Usually, nothing. When he went back outside to the lemonade stand, Evan noticed that the last pitcher was turned upside down on the cooler. "Oh, come on, Scott," he said. "What? It was hot. And you said we could always make more." "Yeah, well, we didn't have as much as I thought at the house. I got grape juice and ginger ale." "I hate ginger ale," said Scott. "I wouldn't give you a penny for it." It turned out that a lot of people felt the same way. Business was definitely slower and the day got hotter. The sun beat down on them so feverishly that it was easy to imagine the sidewalk cracking open and swallowing them whole. Fanning himself, Evan said, "How much money do you really think we could make?" "I don't know," said Scott, pushing his baseball cap down over his eyes. "I mean on a hot day like this," Evan said, silently adding the words, "for tomorrow. If we sold 8 pitchers of lemonade, what do you think we'd each make?" 8 pitchers? "I don't know." Scott shook his head. His baseball cap face wagged back and forth. "Too hot for math. And it's summer." Evan pulled the red pen out of his pocket and started to write on the palm of his hand. 8 times 50 divided by 2. That didn't seem right. Jessie would know. She'd do that math in a second. Evan capped the pen and jammed it into his pocket. "But I bet it's a lot," said Evan. "I bet on a hot day like this we could easily make some real money in these lemonade sales." "Yeah," said Scott. "Then we'd be rich, and I'd get an Xbox, the new one with the dual controls." "I'd get an iPad," said Evan. He'd been saving for one for a year, but every time he had some money put away, well, it just disappeared, like the $10 from Grandma. She'd given him and written in a card, "Here's a little something to get you that music thing that you wanted." But the money was gone. He had treated Paul and Ryan to slices of pizza at the townhouse, and it had been fun. "That would be so great, to listen to music whenever I wanted," said Evan. "I would tune you out," he added in his own head. They sat in silence, feeling the heat suck away every bit of their energy. Evan was hatching a plan. The heat wave was supposed to last for 5 days, and he and a friend, not Scott, had set up a lemonade stand every day for 5 days. He'd definitely have enough to buy an iPod. He imagined himself wearing it as he walked to school, wearing it on the playground. "Hey, Megan, yeah, it's my iPod, sweet, huh?" he would think to himself. Wearing in a glass when the teacher droned on about fractions and percentages. Nah, but it would be so cool. At least there would be one thing that didn't totally stink about going back to school this year. After 2 hours, they decided to call it quits. Sales had dropped off fast and then stopped altogether. "Hey, did you notice something?" asked Evan, stacking the chairs. "What?" said Scott. "When we started the stand, most of our business came from that direction." He pointed down toward the curve in the road. "But after an hour, one person who walked past us from that direction bought a cup. Not one. They all said no thanks and kept walking. Why do you think that is?" "Don't know," said Scott. "Boy, you're a real go-getter," said Evan. "You know what? You know that?" Scott socked him in the chest, but Evan defended and knocked Scott's cap off while Scott was scrambling for his hat. Evan said, "Just hang here for a minute, okay?" and set off down the street. As soon as he rounded the curve, he knew why business had fallen off so badly. There was Jessie and Megan Moore Terry, from his class. They were standing inside of a wooden booth, and their sign said, "Lemonade, frosty, delicious, thirst quenching. Wow, only 50 cents per cup." By the looks of it, their business was booming. Evan watched as Jessie accepted a fistful of dollar bills from a mother surrounded by kids. At that moment, Jessie looked up and saw him. Evan had a weird feeling like he'd been caught cheating on a test. He wanted to run and hide somewhere. Instead, he froze. What would Jessie do? Evan couldn't believe it. She sneered at him. She crooked her head to the side and gave him a little, "I'm so much better than you" smile. And then, she waved the money in her hand at him as if to say, "Look." She waved it as if to say, "Look how much money I've got." Bet you can't beat that. Evan turned on his heel and walked away. Behind him, and he could hear Megan Mortally laughing at him, clear as a bell. Chapter 4, Partnership. Jessie had been waiting for this moment, the moment when Evan would see their lemonade stand, see the wonderful decorations they had made, see the crowds of people waiting in line, and see Megan Mortary standing by her side. He would see it all, and he would be so impressed. He would think to himself, "Wow, Jessie is one cool kid. She sure knows how to run a lemonade stand, right?" And then he'd jog over and say, "Hey, can I help out?" And Jessie would say, "Sure. We were hoping you'd come over, and it would be like old times." Why hadn't it worked out that way? With one part of her brain, Jessie continued to take money from the customers and make change. That was part of her brain that worked just fine. With the other part of her brain, Jessie went over what had happened with Evan. That was part of her brain that tended to run in circles. She and Megan were selling lemonade. Business was good. Then Miss Prawley, a neighborhood mom, walked up. She had a bunch of kids with her in her backyard running through the sprinkler, and now they wanted 12 cups of lemonade. 12! That was the biggest sale of the day. Megan got cracking, pouring the lemonade, and Jessie took 6 singles that Miss Prawley handed her. All the kids from Miss Prawley's backyard were chanting, "Lemonade, lemonade, lemonade." A fly buzzed by Jessie's ear. They had been having a problem with flies because of the sticky lemonade spills on the stand. And she crooked her head to one side and shoo! It since her hands were busy with the money. And that's when Jessie looked up and saw Evan standing there, staring. So she smiled, but he didn't smile back. So she waved, and even though she had all the money in her hands, she'd wave. She'd know that he was happy to see her. And then he stalked off, all stiff-legged and bristly, and she never got to say, "Sure. Sure, we were hoping you'd come over," like she had rehearsed in her head. And just then, Tommy Crowley, who was 2 years old, pulled down his bathing suit and peed right there on the lawn. And Megan laughed so loud, Jessie was sure that they could hear her all over the neighborhood. That's what had happened. That's exactly what had happened. But Jessie knew that something else entirely had happened. And she didn't get it. The way she didn't get a lot of things about people. All she knew, that was the sight of Evan walking away from her from the second time in that one day, made her feel so sad and alone that she just wanted to go home and go to her room and curl up on her bed with Charlotte's Web. "Hey, Madam Cash Register," said Megan, nudging her. "You're falling behind. Ring 3 ladies and 1 for this kid over here." Jessie turned away from the retreating figure of Evan. That's a $1.50, she said to the woman standing in front of her. She took the $5 bill from the woman that she was holding out and made change from her lockbox. All of her energy on that part of her brain that worked just fine. It's true that even Evan had first walked out of the garage. Jessie had banged up in her room and tried to think of every possible way that she could to make life as living misery. She had thought of telling Mom that Evan was the one who broke the toaster by playing hockey in the house, which was not allowed. She would thought of taking back every one of her CDs from his room even the ones she knew that she would not listen to. She had even thought of putting peanut butter in his shoes. This is something she had read in a book, and she loved the image of that moment of horror when he'd think he'd somehow gotten dog doo inside his shoe. But when the ideas had finished bouncing around in her brain, and when her breathing had returned to normal and her fists were not clenched at her sides anymore, she knew what she really wanted to do to get back at Evan, the one who was so much fun to be around, the one who helped her out of every jam. Like when she ate all of Lorna Doane's that Mom had set aside for the Girl Scout meeting. And Evan had ridden his bike to the 7-Eleven and bought a new package so that Mom didn't even notice. Or when she accidentally, well, not accidentally, but how she's supposed to know, picked up the red flowers in her grandma's garden when they were hybrid experiments. Evan had said they had both done it, so Grandma was disappointed and it was spread around. Or the time Jessie had smashed the ceramic heart that Daddy had given her because she was so mad that he had left them. And then, when she had cried about her broken heart, Evan had glued every single piece back together again. She wanted back the Evan who was her best friend. But Evan didn't want her because he thought she was a baby and that she was going to embarrass him in Miss Overton's class. So she had to prove to him that she was the big kid, that she could keep up with the crowd, that she could fit in, even with his 4th grade class. I'll show him. I can sell lemonade too, just as good as him and Scott. I won't embarrass him. So Jessie got down to business. She knew she needed a partner from her past experience. She had learned that having lemonade stand alone wasn't considered very cool, and it was considered pathetic. And her partner would have to be a 4th grade girl, because that's what it was all about, showing she could fit in with the 4th graders. So she questioned, who? It had to be a girl who lived in the neighborhood, or at least close enough to bike to her house. It had to be someone that Jessie had talked to at least once. No way could she call up a girl she'd never talked to. And it had to be someone who seemed really nice. This was part of the problem because Jessie knew that she often thought people were nice and they turned out to be not so nice. Case in point, those 2nd grade girls. So Jessie decided it had to be someone who Evan thought was nice and who Evan knew things about. He was the one who had explained with his big arm around her shoulder. Jessie, those girls are making fun of you. They are not nice. When Jessie thought about all the different requirements, there was only one obvious answer, and that was Megan Mortelli. She lived just less than 3 blocks down the street. Jessie had said hi to her a few times while biking in the neighborhood, and Evan must have thought she was nice because Jessie had found a piece of paper in the trash can with Megan's name written on it. Why would he cover a page with her name if he didn't think she was a nice person? Jessie went to the kitchen and climbed onto the stool so she could reach the cabinet over the stove. She took down a school phone book and looked through the listings from last year's 3rd grade class. No Megan Mortelli. Duh, Jessie remembered. She moved halfway through the school year. With a sinking heart, Jessie checked the phone book. No Mortelli family, she said, listed in the Damon Road. Okay, said Jessie, slapping the phone book shut and putting it back in the cabinet over the stove. Time for plan B. Jessie went to the hall closet and got out her backpack, which had been hanging there empty since the last day of school. Inside, she put 3 frozen cans of lemonade from the freezer and her lockbox full of change. She put the $10 bill, still paper clipped to last year's birthday card from her grandmother, in her top desk drawer. Then she went down to the garage, strapped on her helmet, and rode off on her bike. As she left the driveway, she could see Evan and Scott's lemonade stand on the corner, but she was careful not to make any eye contact. She didn't want to talk to Evan until she was ready to, ta-da, impress him. Her heart leaped when she imagined him ditching Scott to come hang out with her. Megan's house was so close that Jessie got there in less than 30 seconds, and less than 30 seconds wasn't nearly long enough for her to plan what she was going to say. So she rode back and forth in front of the house for about 15 minutes trying to pick up right words. "What are you doing?" a voice shouted from the upstairs window. Jessie slammed her foot on the brakes and looked up. Megan was staring down at her. She looked huge. Her voice did not sound very nice. "Riding my bike," said Jessie. "Well, why are you riding it back and forth?" asked Megan impatiently. "In front of my house." "I don't know," said Jessie. "You want to play?" "Who are you?" asked Megan. "Jessie," said Jessie, pointing down the street toward her house. Evan's little sister." "Evan's little sister?" asked Megan. Jessie felt like a deflating balloon. "Yeah." "Oh," said Megan. "I can't tell, 'cause of the helmet." Jessie took off her helmet. "So you want us?" she asked. There was a long pause. "Where's Evan?" asked Megan. He's out somewhere with a friend," said Jessie. "Oh," said Megan. Jessie looked down the street. "People tell you things." Evan had told her once with their hands in their faces on the way they stand. "It's not just what they say. You got to pay attention, Jessie," he said. "You got to watch for the feelings that they're saying, not the words." Jessie looked back up. It was hard to see Megan at all. She was far up and behind the window screen. Jessie sucked in her breath. "Do you want to do something?" After a long pause, Jessie started counting in her head. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000, 6, 1,000. "Sure," said Megan. Then her head disappeared from the window. A minute later, Megan was standing in the front door. "Hey," she said, opening the screen. Jessie raised her hand in something that was halfway between a wave and a salute as she walked in. Her sweaty bangs stuck to her forehead where her helmet had been smashing them down. She was so nervous about saying something stupid. She didn't say anything at all. Megan leaned against the banister of the stairs and crossed her arms. "So," said Jessie. She stared at Megan, who was fiddling with her 7 or 8 hand bracelets on her arm. Jessie counted 2 Livestrongs, 1 Red Sox World Championship, 1 March of Dimes, and 1 for the Race for the Cure. "What's that one?" she asked, pointing to the band bracelet with the tiger stripe. Megan stretched it off her wrist and gave it to Jessie. "It's an animal rescue league. My mom gave me some money and they gave me this as a bumper sticker. I've got 22 band bracelets." "Cool," said Jessie, handing the bracelet back. Megan flipped it back on. She continued to play with the bracelets on her arm, running them up and down. "So what do you want to do?" asked Megan. "I don't know," said Jessie. I don't know, let me think. We could have a lemonade stand." "Ew," said Megan, sounding bored. "Oh, it's fun. Come on." "We don't have any lemonade," said Megan. "I got 3 cans," said Jessie. She slipped the backpack off of her back and dumped out 3 cans of frozen lemonade. Her lockbox came rattling out too. "What's that?" asked Megan. "My lockbox," said Jessie. "We can use it to make change." She felt her face getting red. Maybe 4th graders weren't supposed to have lockboxes. "How much money you got?" asked Megan. "You mean in change or altogether?" Megan pointed at the lockbox. "How much is in there?" $4.42. 14 quarters, 5 dimes, 3 nickels, and 27 pennies. Jessie didn't say anything about the $10 she had left at home. Both of Megan's eyebrows shot up. "Exactly?" she asked. What do those eyebrows mean?" Jessie wondered in a panic. Why was Megan smiling at her? "Jessie, those girls are making fun of you. They're not nice," kept running through her head. Jessie didn't say anything. She had a sick feeling in her stomach, and it was going to turn out badly. Megan straightened up. Wow, you're rich, she said. Want to go to 7-Eleven? We could get Slurpees. But Jessie pointed to the cans of lemonade. On the carpeted hallway floor, the frost of them already starting to sweat off. We could do the lemonade stand later, said Megan. Maybe. Jessie thought of Scott and Evan, racking up sales 2 blocks down. How was she going to prove herself to Evan if she couldn't even get Megan to have a stand? How about the lemonade stand first, Jessie said. Then the Slurpees with our earnings. I bet we'd have enough to get chips and gum. You think? Said Megan. I know, said Jessie. Look, she held up a can of lemonade. It says right here on the can, you can. It yields 64 ounces. So we get 8 cups from each can. And we sell the cups for half of $1. So that's $4. And then there are 3 cans. So there's $12 altogether, right? The numbers flashed in Jessie's brain so fast she didn't even think about what was multiplying and dividing and adding. It just all made sense to her. Hey, how old are you? Megan said, looking sideways. 8, said Jessie. But I'll be 9 next month. Megan shook her head. That math doesn't sound right. No way we can make $12 just from 3 cans. Yeah, said Jessie. I'll show you. Do you have a piece of paper? Jessie started to draw the pictures. She knew the other kids couldn't see numbers the way she did. They needed the pictures for it to make sense. Look, she said, here we have 3 pitchers of lemonade because we have 3 cans of lemonade. And each pitcher's got 64 ounces in it. And she drew her a picture. Now when we pour a cup of lemonade, we'll pour 8 ounces because that's how much is in a cup. You don't want to pour less than that, and you don't want to pour more. You don't want to look like a cheapskate. So each pitcher is going to give us 8 cups, she said. Because 8 times 8 equals 64, right? Now we'll sell each cup for 50 cents. That's a fair price. That means every time we sell 2 cups, we make $1, right? Because 50 cents plus 50 cents equals $1. So look, I'll circle the cups by 2 so you can see and you can count them. Megan counted the circle pitchers in the cups. 10, 11, 12. That's how much money we'll make, said Jessie. If we sell all the lemonade and if we do the lemonade stand. Wow, said Megan, you're really good at math. She puffed her cheeks out and like a bullfrog and thought for a minute. Then she popped both of her cheeks with her hands and said, whatever. Let's do the lemonade thing. Jessie felt soaked in relief. Maybe this was going to work after all. An hour later, Jessie and Megan had transformed the little wooden puppet theater in Megan's basement into the hottest new lemonade stand on the block. The stand was decorated with tissue paper, flowers, cut-out butterflies, glittery hearts. It was a showstopper. And boy, did people notice it. Kids in the neighborhood, strangers walking their dogs, moms with strollers, and the 2 guys fixing the telephone wires. They all came to buy lemonade. And just when Jessie and Megan were on the verge of running out, Mrs. Morterry went to the store and bought 3 more cans, free of charge. So when Miss Crowley asked for 12 cups exactly at the moment when Evan rounded the curve and saw her lemonade stand, Jessie felt like she had scored 100 on a test and gotten 5 points extra. So why did Evan stomp off? And how come she didn't feel like she had won anything at all? All right. And we'll pick up on chapter 5 here in just a little bit after a break. I see that chinchilla looks like he's pretty hungry. He likes to play around.